Hello, my name is Anna. I am a doctor in the Irish Doctors for the Environment, and I'm the chair of the working group for sustainable healthcare. So I'll be telling you a little bit about IDE.
Yeah, so my name's Gula. I'm another of the doctors working with IDE. I'm currently working as an intern and due to start my anaesthetic training in July. And I'm the IDE secretary, and then I'm also the chair of the curriculum working group.
This is just a few words about us and who we are. We refer to ourselves most often with the acronym of IDE. We have basically started as a group in 2018. So I don't think that our founders at the time knew that if the global healthcare sector was a country, it would be the fifth largest emitter on the planet. But that is actually a fact. So we are all trying to work to reduce our own carbon footprint. As I said, we refer to ourselves as IDE, and IDE means Os Gaeilge, or in Irish. So IDE means thirst, as in thirst for goodness or knowledge. And we're very delighted that our acronym ended up meaning this. So who are we? This is one of our members at the Fridays for Climate, the school strike, which is, I think, the first time that the IDE was present in any great numbers in public. Well, this was the latest. We had 165. I think that has actually grown out to 220 signed up members. And we have a mailing list of about 700 members. We have a committee on which there are 12 positions. We have our operations manager and our press officer and various other functions. We have 11 working groups, and we have a consultant advisory board with 70 specialties represented. So the working groups are the most active part. It's active transport, then inclusion of climate change in medical curriculum, that Ola leads, and he'll be telling you about that later. A group on anesthetic gases, which is also very active. A group of sustainable healthcare, of which I'm the chair. Sustainable diet in healthcare facilities, and our member Roisin Fitzgerald, she's a dietitian. So we aren't just doctors, so we are mainly doctors, but we do also have members who are other healthcare professionals. Roisin has written several really good documents, and she's trying to change the Eat Well plate, and she's working with the department. So we have a direct action. So when we are organising any protests, that's led by Callum. The community green practice is led by our GP members. We have the air quality research group, which has been very active of late and is looking at air quality in hospitals. We have a research group that's trying to get some projects off the ground, the healthcare divestment from fossil fuel, and the planetary health group. And as you can see, we've started in 2019 with the school strikes for climate, and we have continued with various other initiatives that I'll be telling you about. One of them was by our active transport member, Vinny, took all the doctors on bikes out to push for cycling lanes between Cork hospitals. We have raised awareness, and Ola has been leading the plastic-free life on the HSE fringes. You can see him there in the article in the newspapers. And we have published several letters in newspapers and submitted ideas and have been interviewed. We have also worked on education and on how to run green events. We had a green conferences group. We are trying to engage healthcare workers through planetary health days, of which we held 2 so far, one in 2019 and one in 2020. We had hosted several events, both in person before and online now. And we have developed several policies and fostered political engagement and took part in various actions. We are affiliated to a number of organisations promoting both health, environmental health and planetary health in Ireland and internationally. And we were really taking off when the plague hit, and 29th of February 2020 was when the first patient was registered with COVID in Ireland. And initially we all thought, sure, at least the environment is going to get a bit of a reprieve. But actually, as the United Nations Environment Programme said, we are nowhere near that goal, and we're actually polluting even more, and we are not on track on bridging this gap. Actually, the whole pain of 2020 reduced carbon emissions only by 7%. So as you can see, this is where we're going with 210. this is the current policies, and this is where we need to get as per UN emissions gap report. And we will need to tackle the global transport, because that is not even in the nationally determined contributions at present. So why am I showing you this? Because we are trying to work at the moment with our government so that recovery from COVID is on the right in the low carbon effects initiative, so that we put money into green recovery as opposed to on the high carbon recovery, which unfortunately at the moment looks like it's the same, if not outweighing the low carbon recovery. And as we said, a lot of this will be linked to our own private actions, but we are trying to change the system, and we're trying to educate everybody to know that the next pandemic is coming. So what have we done since the pandemic? We have held several online meetings, and our members try to get sustainable PPE off the ground. We have written about the horror that are disposable gloves. We have supported the cycle lanes which were open in Dublin during the pandemic. We gave interviews in the Sunday Times to support Time for Action. In terms of clinician involvement, there are several recorded presentations. One of them is ours, but obviously NHS is the leader, so there were several presentations from NHS people who are working on NHS Zero. We have organised Planetary Health Week in December, all masked up. Our GP members have created a planetary health infographic on what can GPs do. We have launched a podcast because we couldn't meet in person. We have planted trees around the hospitals. We're trying to establish a green network and have various groups going from bottom up collaborate. We have written a letter asking for a fresh start for equitable, sustainable and healthy recovery from COVID, and submitted this letter to one of our TDs. TD in Ireland is Táthta Dála, that's the same thing as your MP. And this was covered in the Irish Times, so we were very pleased with that. The most recent thing we did is that we have provided expert evidence as part of the climate action plan of the Irish government. And that was what we were literally just doing at the beginning of the week. So this whirlwind tour in what we have done is just to prove to you that you should never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world, because indeed it is the only thing that ever has.
When you initially started, what was your expectation and how do you think your work has changed?
I'm very close to being one of the founders, but I'm not one of the founders. But I think initially what they just wanted to create was a place where doctors and other healthcare professionals could come together with an interest for planetary health and climate change and sustainable healthcare. And I suppose the earliest things we did was to host these small events or small talks where we had a speaker come in and do a little presentation or a talk on a topic in relation to planetary health. In the early days, there was only kind of 10, 20 people attending these talks. And then it slowly grew into the IDE we see today. But it's been astonishing, I suppose, development from that humble beginning to now a national organization with quite a powerful voice in the media and beyond.
What do you think are the biggest barriers to achieving more sustainable healthcare?
I think the barriers are people, first of all, need to start thinking and realizing how big of a player we are. And that bit about the healthcare being the 5th largest emitter on the planet, that was in one of the first talks I heard by IDE. I learned about this. So I think that the biggest thing is we need to make people in healthcare realize how much we are contributing to the problem. And actually, my first Planetary Health Day initiative showed that if somebody is there to be the beacon and the torch, there are so many people who are interested in joining and doing something. So I think realizing what the problem is and starting to do something about it, no matter how small, is really the first and maybe the most important step. And it sounds small, but it's actually large to go from ranting to doing.
Take on something small to begin with. I think people have this idea that they have to do something major and something that's going to change the world for everyone. But you can start by doing something small. And Anna just included my kind of funny little article where I went plastic free while being a medical student. And obviously I didn't include kind of healthcare supplies. It was just much more on a personal level. But just doing something like that can actually make a difference, because it can make people aware that this is actually an issue. And just starting off with something small, then you never know what that might lead into. And I think one of the most amazing things about IDE is that this has become a platform where people can come together with their kind of shared interests And you also get this amazing thing where medical students can cooperate and work together with consultants as equals. And that's not something you see in healthcare that often. So yeah, like make it simple. And the other thing I really want to say is that medical students are extremely powerful if they want to and if they come together. I graduated last year, and it's amazing how as soon as you graduate and become a doctor, you kind of have to build up that, I suppose, reputation again, because now you're in a completely different position. Medical students really do have a powerful voice, but junior doctors, you kind of have to build that up again in a few years. And obviously I'll get there, but it's a different position to be in.
I think that is really an important thing, because like I'm a consultant chemical pathologist. We work as a holacracy. We kind of have the decision making way the same as Extinction Rebellion. Everybody does what they are talented for, or what they feel drawn to, or where they think that they could contribute. And we really do not have a hierarchy. And I know that there is a group, the Doctors for Extinction Rebellion, and I think that they work in a very similar way in the UK. On our most recent submission to the government, we are working with Stop Climate Chaos. We are basically working with anybody that wants to work with us, and wherever we feel we could join in. But our main focus is to work from what we know about, and to both act to decarbonize healthcare, but also to show how climate crisis is a health crisis. That is really what I start most of my presentations with.
So how would you advise young people to kind of educate themselves a bit more about the climate crisis?
There are several really good resources, and this is, for example, what our GP group has started doing, how to educate GPs on what they can do. Read the Lancet report, that's the first thing. Read the United Nations emissions report. Everything we learn as doctors, particularly when you're working in metabolic clinics like I am, and I do diabetes and lipids, it is all coming together. Whatever is good for the planet is good for humans. If we move more with our own energy, we are using our own muscles, we are not laying down as much fat. If we eat more plants, like by all means, we aren't saying everybody should become vegetarian, like I'm not. But if we advise our patients to eat more plants, and if we eat more plants and less meat, that also transfers to health benefits. If you cycle more, you contribute less to pollution. Air pollution is a known factor in childhood death, and there was a recent report in the UK which has looked at that. So you can look at both your medical education to learn how does climate contribute to it, or you can look at it from the activist point. But really there are two parallel streams of information.
What's the thing that you're most proud of that you've achieved as an organisation?
Our submission to the last climate adaptation plan made it like word for word into the government plan. That was a great one. I'm currently really emotionally attached to the little trees that are growing. We planted 25 trees in my hospital, so I'm checking on them every 3 days and looking at them budding. There was a big crowdfunding last spring where we wanted people to plant a tree virtually, because we were collecting money for them, for anybody who was their COVID hero. So if it was your neighbor who was dropping you food, or like, you know, it wasn't a link to healthcare. So we had managed to collect enough money to plant 1,000 trees.
I was part of the beginning of IDE. I think I'm very proud of the community we've been able to create, and also how we've managed to become a trusted voice or an opinion in the debate, and in, I suppose, within climate change and planetary health.
I certainly didn't realize until I started working for the IDE and doing things, how much we can use our trust in, the society does trust us, and with good reason. We put an awful lot of effort into keeping people healthy and doing things. You have a far higher standing and far more power than you know. Let's use what we know to do what we should.
What I wanted to do was just give you, I suppose, a little overview of the work I've been doing with the curriculum working group, because I think that's quite pertinent to the medical students. It's just a brief overview of what we've been doing. So when I first joined IDE, this was kind of my main interest because we'd learned nothing about planetary health or climate change or sustainable healthcare. I didn't feel that the medical curriculum as it stood adequately prepared me for, I suppose, the future of medicine and what medicine will look like in 20 years or 30 years. So what we started off doing, we put together this group of quite a few medical students and a few junior doctors, and eventually we had a few consultants join as well. And then we started off trying to come up with a plan on how we could approach the issue. And Ireland is interesting because there are 6 medical schools. So the potential is there for quite a swift change if you wanted to. So the first thing we did was we drafted a letter to all the deans in the medical schools in Ireland, just asking them if they were interested in adding planetary health and climate change to the curriculum. And we just included some references, and then we got the Association of Medical Students in Ireland to support a letter. And in fairness, didn't really get much response. A few of the medical schools got back to us and said they were interested, but they didn't really have any plans themselves. So they were kind of relying on us to come up with suggestions. So the next thing we then moved on to doing, and this was quite an extensive project that didn't really lead to much in the end, but we put together quite an extensive draft of what topics and modules could be included in the medical curriculum in terms of planetary health and climate change. So this is an extensive kind of 20-page document with a detailed enough overview of different topics that we thought should be addressed. Again, this didn't really pick up, but we slowly started getting a bit of attention from different faculty members. In early 2020, we started a Try and Working group where we got planetary health teachers or faculty members from all the Irish medical schools. And we came together and we came up with a loose plan on how we could address this. And we came up with a problem list of the limitations and what was actually what we had to overcome to further improve the planetary health curriculum. So these are kind of the main issues and obstacles that were highlighted from various faculty members. And obviously this will give us a good, I suppose, area of focus where we could put in our efforts into trying to overcome this. Obviously, I don't know what you know, and obviously the listeners, in terms of the main difference between the UK and Ireland is that in the UK, the General Medical Council, who sets the outcomes for graduates, have actually included sustainable healthcare in these outcomes, but that's not the case in Ireland. So there's no requirements from above for the schools to include any of this. So that was one of the things we wanted to see if we could change. Recently enough, we sent this letter to the Irish Medical Council asking them if they wanted to do something similar. And this letter was co-signed by medical students from all the medical schools in Ireland except one. So it's really a coming together of medical students from different schools. But it was all backed up by a project we did. We joined the Planetary Health Report Card Initiative. This was started in 2019 by American medical students, where they wanted to just review the planetary health teaching in American medical schools. And I reached out to them to see if we could use their method and use their resources to do something similar in Ireland. And it turns out that they'd already been in contact with UK medical schools. The 2021 report included both American, UK, Irish and Canadian medical schools. And basically what it is you go through different outcomes or different questions for your medical school, and you answer them, and then you get a report card in the end, basically getting an overview of how your school is doing in terms of planetary health curriculum, research, community outreach, support for student-led initiatives and campus sustainability. And then you can compare it. What we really wanted to try and highlight was the few positive initiatives that we could find and bring them together and try and highlight them as much as we can to really show that initiatives do make a difference, and especially if we can bring them together and learn from one another. In the end, we created the Planetary Health Teaching in Irish Medical Schools Report 2021. And this report hasn't been published yet, and it's just been sent to the Irish Medical Council for them to review, but it's basically an overview of what's going on in Irish medical schools in terms of planetary health teaching, sustainable healthcare teaching, and all the other components listed here. The hope being that this report will get the Irish Medical Council to realise that it is important that they do something to try and influence the school to further implement planetary health into their curriculum. So we're waiting a response on that. Our newest project is to survey medical students on their attitudes, so whether or not they think planetary health, climate change, sustainable healthcare is important for their clinical practice and it's important for them to learn about. Our hope is that medical students will say that this is important, and then again this is something we can use to go back to the medical council, go back to the schools and say this is something medical students want to learn about. I do hope that within the next few months or so that we will kind of get some tangible results. As of yet, we haven't really been able to achieve much in terms of actual tangible results that students could benefit from, but it's been a bit of a long journey. It's one of those things that, although there are consultants and there's senior doctors involved in the group, it is student-led, and I'm very much trying to replace myself with a current medical student so that it remains student-led.
If you want to contact us, our contact details are there, and we would love to work with anybody who wants to work with us. Thank you.